Are you guys seeing, either of you seeing any new risks on the horizon? So we saw what happened at Target, Staples, Home Depot. Do we see opportunities for that to repeat itself many times? Do you see new things coming down the pipe?
What we're seeing a rise of is, why hack the machine when you could hack the human? Phishing attempts or attacks are getting a lot more detailed and a lot more advanced. Another thing that we see is physical infiltration of environments. Basically where people will go into a retail environment, find either a open network port or stick a USB with malicious code into the back of a computer. And, at that point you have your first point of entry. This is why the controls in PCI are so important, because if properly implemented, those systems and those open ports will be segmented from the environment. If someone did that, they wouldn't really get anything. But it gets all back to people maintaining their compliance throughout the year.
The more we're seeing is also different types of attacks. So PCI compliance does focus on credit cards. When you start looking at the underground economy servers, you're starting to see health information for sale, social security numbers for sale, complete identities so that people can fake passports, fake, immigration documentation, pull full identity theft type of engagements on. So, obviously stealing that type of information has its own benefits as well. A lot of people have taken the opinion that, stealing health information is sort of nosy Nelly stuff, but not really valuable. But unfortunately what we're seeing is there are ways to sell that information to commit insurance fraud. There's other things that can be done with that information. And so there are things coming through from the OCR, Office of Civil Rights, who's actually coming through and instituting a lot of controls around HIPAA and actually trying to protect that EPHI type data. Obviously you've got, some other protections around your, PII, your personal identifiable information. So, I think all those things are all going to play a role, because every company has at least some PII usually. You have employees, so you typically have their social security numbers or W-2s, something along those lines. So every organization has some of that information.
So I think what we're starting to touch on is, if you limit yourself to PCI compliance and don't think about it from a risk-based perspective, there may be some gaps that you're not considering. I don't know if you guys can touch on that area a little bit more.
So yeah, so from any organization, obviously as part of our job as internal auditors is to really look through the process of saying, okay, well, what are the risks to our organization? And in a lot of organizations we talk to, one of the biggest problems we do see is that they look at everything very sort of siloed and have said, okay, these are the things that we need to worry about. But they've never really done a true data inventory, figured out what they have, what have their different business units brought in. As companies get bigger and larger, they kind of take on their own entities. People get some amount of independence, start implementing their own systems, and it's been shocking with some of the companies that we work with that they found out they had an entire division that did something that senior management wasn't even aware of, or wasn't aware of how it was affecting them or what kind of data they were pulling in. So
really social engineering is, it's old school spy games. It's kind of a really, from our perspective, it's made our jobs very interesting again, because rather than looking at firewall logs, we're looking at the behaviors within an organization. And I think the biggest thing is that employees of companies need to know that the information that they have, no matter how non-volatile they think it is still protected information within a company. And as Corbin was saying, these attackers are starting to look at weaving different pieces of information together to create something that's valuable. And I think that with social engineering is that you're basically relying on that implicit trust that exists between two human beings in any interaction, and you're willing to take the side of breaking that trust without that other person knowing. With the advent of social media, people are more apt to share a lot more information about themselves without thinking whether it's good or whether it's not good. And we get into a situation where people are more likely to trust a complete stranger with very private information than not. And these attackers know this, and they're taking advantage of that. If it really doesn't take much to extract someone's password. If you go into a gathering and you start asking people, if you just go out and start asking people what their password for Gmail is, within about 3 questions you could probably guess it. They might mention that, their password is their dog, and they won't tell you their dog's name, but then you ask them in another question afterwards, what's your dog's name? And they'll tell you. So it's like basically putting together a system of getting this information out of people when they don't have defenses up.